Greetings. Hello there. Welcome to the Civility Matters podcast, the podcast that seeks to answer the question, why you got to be so rude? I'm your host, John O'Brien, author of the book, Rudeness Rehab, and I'm thrilled to have you here live watching the podcast, or maybe perhaps watching the recording. And I think today is going to be a very informative episode that you won't want to miss. So as I travel around the country and talk to people about the topic of incivility and social divisiveness, which we'll be talking about today, people tend to agree that they're greatly concerned about the rise of incivility and rudeness in our society. But then they also ask me the question, John, is it really as bad as we seem to think it is? What do the data say? And that's why I always have come up with a startling statistic for each episode of the podcast. And so today's startling statistics, actually I have two. One comes from the American National Election Study, which looks at the perceptions that people have from one party as compared to the other party, or the out party, the political party that's not their party. And if you think about it, that the number of 50 is kind of a neutral number, and below 50, people start to feel cold towards the other party, and above 50, people feel warm towards the other party, probably not expecting a lot of warmth. But in 1978, the Americans were asked about the other party. They rated that level as about 48, which is neither warm or cold, but about neutral. Fast forward to 2016, that number had dropped to 31. And then in 2024, that number was 26. So we are headed in a downward slope. In addition, statistics from the Pew Research Center tell us that growing percentages of Americans report that their perceptions of the other party includes people who are lazy, undisciplined, closed-minded, dishonest, and immoral. So I think it speaks to the perceptions and increasingly negative perceptions that are feeding the social division that we are seeing in our society, which links quite nicely into this month's guest on the Civility Matters podcast, Dr. Dana Ackley. So I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Ackley to the program, and let me tell you a little bit about him. So Dr. Dana Ackley is a psychologist who is an executive coach and author of the book, The Little Book to Save Humanity, which I just happen to have here as part of my book collection, and I recommend it highly. This was published in 2024. In addition, he has a forthcoming book to be published soon, which he'll tell us about, entitled Emotional Intelligence for a Divided World. Dana is an internationally recognized expert in emotional intelligence. He works as an executive coach to senior leaders in a variety of industries. Much of his current work is also devoted to helping society overcome toxic divisiveness. So I hope you will help me give a warm welcome to Dr. Dana Ackley.
I can hear the applause from here.
Yes, can you? Yes, well, I'm sure that the audience will be applauding. Audience.
David is very good.
Yes. So Dana, tell us, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the real topics that we're here for, I'd like to start off by just having guests share one fun fact about themselves.
Okay, and you warned me about this. So, John, I am the master of dumb luck. Somehow I run into people that are just very cool or create opportunities or what have you. And the story I'll tell, I had spoken at the International Conference on Emotional Intelligence in London. And my wife and I stayed over a few days to tour around London. We went to the Churchill Museum, which was the underground bunker that he ran World War II from. We finished up, walked out into Green Park. It was a gorgeous day in London. We just sat on this park bench and enjoyed the green, and it was just wonderful. And this guy comes up and sits down on the other end of the bench, and at first I'm kind of annoyed. And then my manners got the better of me, and I engaged him in conversation. We chatted for a while. He said, I come down to London during the week to work, and then I go home to Edinburgh, where I live. I said, oh, well, what do you do? He said, I'm a member of Parliament. Well, so we talked about that for a bit, and London being London. it began to rain. So he said, let's go back to the members' dining room and have tea. And so we go back to the Parliament members' dining room and we have tea with this guy. And it's just an outstanding experience.
Wow. So in other words, you have connections in high places is the fun fact about you.
By dumb luck.
That's great. Great story. Great story. So you have an expertise in emotional intelligence, which
Okay.
you're certainly well known for and have been, and also this expertise now in social divisiveness and toxic division in our country. So maybe just talk a little bit about how you came to specialize in this.
Well, the work that I get paid for continues to be executive coaching. I'm a recovering clinician. So for 25 years, I was a clinician. And then it shifted over to working with executives and do executive coaching. And I became increasingly concerned about what the statistics that you quoted at the opening of our program reflect, and that our society is becoming increasingly divided. And there are folks called conflict entrepreneurs. And I watch them operate. They operate out of both sides of the political spectrum. And so they will encourage one group. If I'm a Republican, then I'm going to have you hate Democrats. If I'm a Democrat, I'm going to have you hate Republicans, and we're going to call them names. And these are leaders. These are leaders attempting to influence the way people think.
And may I just break in other words, conflict entrepreneurs, just to highlight that, these are people who are kind of purposefully agitating people to, as I think that you or someone, or Peter Coleman said, kind of grab eyeballs and grab attention and elevate themselves. Is that right?
That's exactly right. The politicians are after votes. The media, conflict entrepreneurs, are after how to monetize people watching. And then a lot of folks get on social media and follow this so-called leadership. And it is poisoning us against each other.
Yes, indeed.
And if we don't get a handle on it, humans may become the first species to voluntarily become extinct, because we're also getting increasingly good at killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
So as I watched this stuff unfold, I became increasingly concerned. And I got, this guy reached out to me who had founded the Healthy Democracy Coalition. And he had this program that he ran where he was identifying young, wealthy people. Well, wrong for me on both counts.
Mm-hmm.
But he was organizing chapters of this organization that brought wealthy members of wealthy families together, typically in their 40s, from across the political aisle, because he was concerned, just like you and I are, about what's going on. And he said he wanted me to establish a chapter in Roanoke, and he had one in a variety of cities. And he wanted me to donate a fairly significant amount of money. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. But what I can do is be an organizational consultant for you. And kind of introduced, this is like 2017, I'd been watching this, but that kind of got me involved in in a more active way.
Okay. So as you think about, and maybe the answer you just gave kind of is leading into this next question, but what's one experience that most changed the way that you think about your work or people at work?
I thought about that, and I can't identify one dramatic episode. But as I was moving from practicing as a clinical psychologist and doing psychotherapy, and moving into executive coaching, I needed something to organize my approach to working with executives. Mm-hmm. And came across emotional intelligence, which is the intelligent use of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
All got emotions, and how do we use them intelligently? Because they can also get us in a lot of trouble, just as we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm recalling, and when I was in London, I attended at that conference. I attended what turned out, I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out to be a life-changing event for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this presenter was talking about human evolution and conflict. And what he talked about is, and I've elaborated, I forget now what I've done with it and what he did with it, but basically humans have been evolving for 50,000 generations, if we include our evolutionary forebears. Human history, recorded history, is about 6,000 years or 240 generations.
Huh.
So for 49,760 generations, we lived in caves and such. Danger was ever present. And evolution is a problem-solving process. And so part of the way the human brain evolved was to develop the limbic system. I'm not going to get real technical, folks, but the limbic system, and within that is the amygdala. And the amygdala's job is to scan the environment for danger.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were cave people, danger was ever present. Sudden danger that you had to react to. And if you did not have a well-functioning amygdala, you didn't stick around to contribute to the gene pool.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you, John, and I have these well-functioning amygdalas. Sometimes they make us act rude. You may have noticed.
Really?
That. And that's where the conflict entrepreneurs play. The amygdala, they try to scare us. And they try to make us think that somebody who thinks differently, makes love differently, has a different color to their skin, or sometimes even a different gender, they're the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the amygdala is dumb as a box of rocks. Because it's very good at knowing when the bear is chasing us and get us going. That's a good thing. But for the kinds of problems that us modern people face, it's not very sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
It makes two systematic errors that the conflict entrepreneurs play on. And that is that it would rather see something as a threat and be wrong than miss a real threat, because then you're dead and you don't get any more chances.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that it does not differentiate between physical and psychological threats.
Uh-huh.
Public speaking is the most popular phobia in America. Nobody's going to die getting up to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have that particular phobia, your body reacts and your brain reacts as if you are. And so the conflict entrepreneurs encourage those reactions. Well, so what I'm trying to do is to help people master their brain, master their amygdala. So stop me when you want to ask a question, but there are 4 parts to the brain that I talk about.
Well, and let me hop in here just to see, because I think we'll probably get into the material that you're talking about. But I want to go back to this idea of the connection. You're sort of talking about the activation of the amygdala.
Yes.
As one of the things the conflict entrepreneur is hoping to do.
Yes.
And I think in the book that you often reference, Peter Coleman's book, he talks about the fact that outrage is as addictive as heroin.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
That activation can sometimes feel very empowering for people.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's talk about this current social division and incivility. How do you connect those two?
Well, part of what happens when you create another group as an enemy is you dehumanize them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I dehumanize you, then I can be rude to you. I don't have to treat you as if you matter. I can treat you as a lesser than. And of course, the most dramatic, well, maybe a hugely dramatic example is what happened to the Jewish people in Germany in World War II.
Yes.
Hitler needed an enemy. He created one. And we know what the aftermath was.
Mhm.
So this is not, we're not playing around here.
Yeah.
This is very serious stuff.
Mhm.
And in civility, if I practice it long enough, it enhances the chances for violence, up to and including more.
Okay.
Because you're not really a person, And I want to be better than you. And I want to engage in the fantasy of control. That if I just put you down, then I'll be safe forever.
Right. So let's talk now about going back to the brain.
Yes.
That I rudely interrupted you.
I invited it.
But it was my amygdala. Okay, just
Yeah, there you go.
So, but let's talk about the brain and how our brains influence behavior.
Okay.
You were starting to talk some about the amygdala, but just the 4 pieces of the brain that you think are important.
Right. As I say in a little book, I'm not asking people to become a brain scientist here. There we go. Yes. But there are 4 parts of the brain, and I've been educating my coaching clients on this for 20 years. And one of my coaching clients is the chair of neurosurgery at a very high status university medical school. And I told him about this. He says, "Oh, well, that explains a lot." So the limbic system is down near the brainstem, which tells us that it evolved early in our human history. And within the limbic system is the seat of emotions. That's where all of our emotions express themselves in our life. And within the limbic system is the amygdala, which is involved with fear and anger, which are 2 sides of the same coin. They simply are, I've seen a threat. And if we're experiencing anger or threat or anger or fear, a real good question to ask ourselves is, what's the threat?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can begin to assess, is this a real threat or is my amygdala acting up on me?
Right.
On top of our head is the cortex. And that's the logic center. So that when people are doing programming or accounting, they are largely, not entirely, but largely using their cortex. The problem with, and it's where we, it's the logic centers, we like to think this is where we make decisions. Problem is that the cortex is vulnerable to rationalization. Oh, look at that red convertible. I'd love to have that red convertible. No, I really can afford it. And no, it doesn't matter that it's a 2-door and I've got 3 little kids. So we can easily talk ourselves into that sort of thing. Behind our forehead is what's called the prefrontal cortex. I don't know why they did the redundant name, but they did. So it's the prefrontal cortex, and that is where logic and emotion are integrated. In other words, that's the seat of emotional intelligence. So what I have found in my work with executives is that when they master nobody totally masters emotional intelligence. For all of us, it's an ongoing process. But as they get better and better at it, they become far better leaders. And the people whom they lead have better lives. Mm-hmm. So this impact more than trickles down, it flows down.
Right. Flows down to the business and flows down to the person as an individual in their health.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
And how are these brain systems, you sort of alluded to this earlier, started talking about it, but how these brain systems are linked in now with our current societal division?
Well, if we don't want to be victims of conflict entrepreneurs, then we have to learn how to overcome the amygdala. Mm-hmm. They are inciting. So there are 3 major models of emotional intelligence, and I won't bore our audience with them. But the one that I use was, the research behind it was begun by Reuven Bar-On, a research psychologist. And he was wandering across his medical school campus one day. And it had a eureka moment. He said, my goodness, everybody on faculty is really smart, but only some of them are successful. Uh-huh. I wonder what makes the difference beyond, what do we need beyond IQ? That took him on a 17-year research project
Mhm.
that identified 16 different components of emotional intelligence. And if I might illustrate,
Yes, please.
on page 85 of Rudeness Rehab, you talk about the four-step mindfulness approach, which you outline 4 steps: stop, breathe, reflect, and choose.
Choose, right. Mhm.
So your book and mine are really, we have the same passion, the same concerns about what's going on in society, and these integrate beautifully. So in order to know that you better invoke the 4-step mindfulness process, you have to have emotional self-awareness. You have to become aware. Oh my gosh, I am just about to blast this person. They've annoyed me, and I'm going to give them what for.
Right.
Well, maybe I should stop.
Mhm.
So, but I've got to recognize that I am about to go. So that's emotional self-awareness, and then breathe. Well, the right kind of breathing, as you know, calms us down.
Mhm.
So that is an element of stress tolerance, another one of the 16 skills. And another one is impulse control. Rather than have that impulse come out, I find with this 4-step mindfulness thing a way to manage that impulse.
Mhm.
And then the last one is choose. And that might be independence, an ability to make our own decisions rather than succumbing to an irresponsible leader's attempt to divide us.
Yeah. Or like you were talking about before, if we are on autopilot and unaware, then it
Yes.
might be our amygdala that simply is driving our response. We're not
Yes.
even, sometimes people say to me in coaching or therapy, I couldn't help it. I just did it. Wait a
Yes.
minute, nope, slow down. It may feel that way, but if you can get it into slow mo, there are ways often that people have choices, and that's what you're talking about. Is with breathing or being aware of impulses, what your urge to do is, and what you might do differently, and then the model to see that you're not just kind of a victim of your impulses, that you can
I
and
think
have to manage them, right?
that is so well put. Not a victim of our impulses, John. Yes.
Although it sometimes feels like we are, and especially when we are unaware of them and other people are kind of poking them, or conflict entrepreneurs are activating them. So looking ahead, how do you think that we are going to be able, will you solve our societal problems for us, Dr. Ackley, please?
Okay.
How are we going to get out of our current toxic polarization? What do you say to people who are caught up in hopelessness of feeling like they'll never get better?
Well, optimism is one of the 16 skills, I might point out.
Okay.
And
In the book.
in the book, yes. And these, by the way, these are skills, which means that all of us can improve them and get better at them. And in fact, on the EQ Press website, in addition to the book, where I hope people if they choose to buy it, will go to the website, the EQPress.com, because, well, first they'll save a couple of bucks over going to Amazon. And second, there are exercises in a separate document.
Okay.
So if you want to get better at emotional self-awareness, if you want to get better at impulse control, I've written 10, 12 exercises for each of these skills. There are almost 200 different things that people can choose from to create their own approach to enhancing the stuff that they feel best about enhancing.
Okay.
And I've lost track of your question.
Okay.
How do we
I was just asking about what people who are hopeless, what you would say to them.
When I have given lectures, not lectures, when I've given workshops for executives, I would say to them, when you were in school, did you take algebra? Oh, yeah. Science? Oh, yeah. History? Oh, yeah. Empathy? Nobody raises their hand. So my work with the book and exercises and stuff is to bring emotional intelligence skills out of the boardroom into the public. because we have not done a good enough job in our society helping people systematically have an opportunity to learn these skills.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's my current mission.
Okay. And you also mentioned, if you could just briefly talk about the Roanoke Project. I know that's a huge topic. We have just a few minutes, but if you could just mention a little bit about that.
In 2020, a local CEO and I co-founded the Roanoke Collaboration Project. And it is the steering committee. Its mission is to create opportunities in our valley of 350,000 people to talk with each other across political, racial, gender, religious lines. So it's got a steering committee of very senior leaders in the community, plus me, and we hold events and we have op-eds. We've got a radio program. We do all of these things as a way to model. Oh, we also have a pledge that hundreds of our local citizens have signed about how to have difficult conversations, how to be respectful, how not to be rude.
Right.
And it's, that has been a very concrete thing that has been very rewarding.
Mm-hmm. And sounds like something that people could replicate, hopefully will replicate around the country.
Exactly. That's right.
So I see there's a question here from one of our colleagues. She talks about the fact that there's some leader in the tech world who says he believes that survival is the highest priority, well above traditional social courtesies like autonomy and independent control, as well as civility. So how does our conversation about civility change if our goal is not to die, or rather those of us who have the most don't die?
Well, I would suggest that that's whoever said that is trying to alarm the amygdala.
So a conflict entrepreneur.
Yes, they are about survival. The amygdala is about survival at all costs.
So in other words, we need to be aware that sometimes the conflict entrepreneurs are in sheep's clothing, or something like that. Something like that.
They have horrible judgment, but they're cunning.
Right.
They're frighteningly cunning.
So it's hard to believe we're almost at our close here, but what final piece of advice do you have for our viewers in regard to the social division we're experiencing?
Well, I would pick up on something you were talking about, that we don't have to be helpless victims. As we come to understand the way our brains work, as we come to understand how logic and emotion can be integrated, we gain control over ourselves. And I would also point out that as we gain that control and we are kind to each other, it has a ripple effect. If I am kind to you today, John,
which you were, thank you,
you are likely to go out and in your other interactions be kind to other people. There is this ripple effect that we can all contribute. We don't have to be helpless victims.
Great. So how can our viewers connect with you after this podcast, and when is your new book actually coming out?
Well, the new book is essentially the old book. It hasn't changed a lot, but we realized that the title was misleading. So the new title is Emotional Intelligence for a Divided World, How to Master Your Brain and Avoid Manipulation. So nonfiction books need to tell people the problem we're trying to solve. And so that'll come out in May. But in the meantime, they can go to the EQ Press website and order the book and or exercises if they want. They can reach me. My email address is Dana, D-A-N-A, .Ackley, A-C-K-L-E-Y, @eqleader.net.
Okay, great. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you, Dana. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Feels like we didn't have enough time, so I'm hoping that you will think about coming back to join our audience, because I think our huge audience would just love to see you here again.
I'd be delighted.
Yeah, good, excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Well, and I want to thank also the viewers who joined us today, who are going to be listening live, or who also will listen to the recording. We'd love to have you back to this podcast. So in closing, I would invite you to recall the old adage: how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Fact is, it's just one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So when it comes to the tidal wave of rudeness and incivility in our society, remember, what kind of light bulb? are you going to be?
Ooh,
Until next time, I'm John O'Brien, and remember, civility matters.